Welcome to Gardening with the Gardeners, a podcast where we discuss our favorite plants, gardens, landscape design, and all things horticulture, with a touch of our crazy homestead lifestyle thrown in.
I'm one of your hosts, Matthew Boone Gardner, a horticulturalist, landscape designer, and fourth-generation owner-operator of Boone Gardner Landscape.
And I'm Hope Gardner, Matt's wife, a horticulturalist with our local county extension office, as well as a landscape designer with the family business. And together, we make up Gardening with the Gardeners.
Welcome back. This is episode number 3 of Gardening with the Gardeners. This week, we're going to discuss watering.
A whole episode on watering?
Why, yes. Water is one of those things that sounds so easy, and we try to describe it to our customers and friends and stuff, but people get it wrong every single day. We can't tell you how many times that you and I are like out shopping or at some unknown, I won't say any names of the box store, but you see the employees watering and they're just spritzing with gusto.
They're just barely,
And then you walk back an hour later and the plants are dead or dying or totally, looking
wilted.
Looking very bad. We are going to review some best practices for watering, understanding that life gets in the way, but try to follow these as best you can.
So water is an essential plant component, and it makes up about 70 to 90% of plant mass. So the growth and the photosynthesis, which is the manufacturing of the plant's very own food, and then the nutrient transport, they're all important chemical reactions that all depend on water uptake from the roots. So water also expands and enlarges new cells within the plant and the stems and the leaves, and it holds them upright.
Otherwise known as turgor pressure.
Yes. So plant water and mineral uptake begins in those delicate little root hairs on the feeder roots. 90% of these roots are located on the root tips, which often occurs in that 12 to 15 inches of soil, and it usually extends well beyond the drip line of the tree. So when that soil gets dry and hard and crusty, this can damage those small root hairs, and the roots can't absorb and transport that water up through the plant parts.
Our clay and clay loam soils like we have in Kentucky have high water holding capacity. It's a good thing, but it's also a double-edged sword. It can be a bad thing. It's particularly in the wintertime with holding too much water and causing root rot and troubles and that kind of thing. Compacted soils have lower water holding capacities than non-compacted soils. So when the soil is compacted, those soil particles are crushed together and they have less space between the soil particles to hold air and water. So there's less pore space for the storage of those items.
Exactly. So then the symptoms and the effects of drought that we've seen, like especially this fall.
Oh, have we ever?
They include wilting, leaf scorch, leaf drop, dieback. And then what we don't see is how those little root hairs and those feeder roots die and that are lost. They become dehydrated because there's no water in those soil particles. So this can cause stress to the plant. In the decline of those plants, they're more susceptible to insects and then disease than what a vigorous plant would be.
And these infestations by these other secondary invaders often deliver the final blow in a plant's demise.
Exactly. So often when we try to diagnose what plant problems are, there's like multiple things going on all at once. And then the first usually comes from some type of stress, and then it's followed by a disease or a pest taking hold.
The impact of a drought may not be fully seen until the following year in reduction of leaf formation and reduced shoot growth on that plant. The trees have shed their leaves as a drought response, may form new buds in late summer or fall when rain starts up again. But if these buds that they just created don't harden off before wintertime, they're subject to getting winter kill and sparse, not full crown in the following season.
But the nice thing is that after that soil is replenished and those roots begin to take up the water. So there's little openings underneath the leaves, and they're called the stoma. And once the water is started to take up, if those stomas don't fully rehydrate, then it can take them longer to open. And what happens then is that there's a delay in that those stomas opening and then gases being exchanged. So that's part of like respiration and transpiration during photosynthesis. And so that photosynthesis, how, like we said, that's the plant's food and how it creates energy. So the growth of these plants can remain stunted for years after that loss of those kind of that critical tissue due to the droughts. So as the plant comes out of that drought situation and it begins to start work, it's really important that we remember to water to prevent a lot of that damage.
I like that you're getting heavy on the botany, stomata and stoma.
Yes, and it's important to understand why water plays such an important role in plants.
It's also important to help by removing or reduce the amount of competitor plants, weeds, other plants around the base of these trees who can suck that moisture out of the soil. Removing cover crops around the trees and shrubs, grass, all those kind of things. So that's why you always see tree rings on newly planted trees. Less competition for water, easier to maintain.
So it's not just because they're so pretty.
Yes. Now, of course, the landscape designer in both of us, we love to do gardens and plantings under trees, which are all fine, but they will require more water and more kind of paying attention to that whole community of plants that you've designed around that tree. Obviously, in natural systems, that's how they naturally occur. But we're talking about newly installed plants. It's kind of a best practice.
Right. It's kind of those baby steps. You got to let those plants get established and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. And then you'll want to mulch around the trees with organic mulch, bark, wood chips, pine straw, even leaves, up to 2 to 3 inches deep, and kind of extend the zone of the root zone. And then you'll want to avoid. You don't want to put too much mulch down, obviously. As we always like to call them, we're trying to avoid
mulch volcanoes.
Mulch volcanoes, the dreaded mulch volcano, and you see them everywhere, where it's just this heaped up, sometimes 2 feet or more.
Yeah, sometimes they really are evident volcanoes.
Yeah, they're bad, but that's really not good for the tree at all. And
well, I was going to say those mulch volcanoes, mulch holds that moisture in, and that's great. But what we don't want is that mulch to hold that moisture in around the trunk of the tree.
Yes.
We want to hold it around the soil.
So you want to pull it away from the root flare as well, which is the part of the trunk that flares out towards the roots. You want to pull that away and kind of not mound up the mulch up on that part of the tree.
So what trees are really good during droughts?
A few include our native hickory, other natives like eastern redbud, Chionanthes virginicus, our fringe tree.
Those are great trees.
Yellowwood, Cladrastis kentuckea.
Another one that should be used more.
Ginkgo biloba, great fall color. Another great fall color is the black gum, Nyssa sylvatica. And a lot of our favorites, the oaks, Quercus. There's so many of them that are great, drought-tolerant, tough, long-lived trees. Chestnut oak, willow oak, shingle oak, southern red oak, Shumard oak, northern red, scarlet, burr, of course the classic pin, and the white oak.
And like you said, those are some of our favorite oaks, but they're also, because a lot of these are native, they know how to withstand our wet winters, dry summers, and that whole, the ebb and flows of those water. Yeah, the cycle. So, but now on the flip side, the plants that are maybe not as strong and don't survive, or at least struggle during our drought periods. So the ones that you need to really watch and take a little extra care of.
Doesn't mean you can't use them.
No, they're great
trees.
We
use them all the time. Just why? Yeah.
But you just have to keep a closer eye on them. Would be your Japanese maples, especially your sugar maple, even dogwoods, believe it or not. Beech trees, Norway spruce, white pines, and you can really see when they get drought and their needles kind of wilt down. And then our hemlocks. So those are all some that just keep an extra eye on. Most garden plants are going to need about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water a week to maintain really healthy leaves and flowers and fruit. And if Mother Nature doesn't provide enough, then it's going to be up to us as the homeowner or the garden center or the gardener to apply that so that the plants don't start dropping flowers or fruit or leaves early.
So when do you need to water?
So the best time to water, it's best to do it like a really deep water. The worst thing you can do is like just sprinkle lightly every day. Because what happens is that frequent shallow water only moistens that top layer of the soil, which encourages those roots to stay shallow. And in turn, that top layer of soil will dry out quickly. So there's a term called hydrophobic, and that is when the water gets so dry that it doesn't want to absorb water, it just rolls off. So you want to make sure that your soil doesn't become hydrophobic and you can water it, and then that water is absorbed in to the soil itself. Because what happens is shallow rooted soil or shallow rooted plants are more susceptible to drying out. And this will actually hold true for lawns as well, but primarily like with landscape plants, they dry out really quickly.
You know, it's also possible to kill plants with kindness. You can overwater just as badly as underwater.
Yes, you can.
And people don't realize this. And so when you overwater, you're forcing all that valuable oxygen. That oxygen is obviously very crucial to plant health, just as crucial as water. And so you want to be sure and not overwater and not do that and let the soil actually dry out between waterings. This is a critical part that we always tell people, because a lot of times people say, oh, I can't let the plant dry out. It's like, no, it's actually good to let the plant dry out some.
Well, it's good to have a balance, because with your soil, you've got to have your soil particles, but you have to have a balance between those and then air and water. And when that balance is off, whether it's too much water, not enough water, that's when the damage occurs. So for newly planted plants, they're going to require more watering because you've got to get those little roots established, and you really want them to grow out into the native soil. And so you've got to make sure that there's enough water, because remember we said when there's no water in the soil, there's no growth in the roots. So you got to make sure that there's enough water, that you've got good root growth. When you have like young vegetables or your annuals, they're going to probably need to be watered every day or two. Especially when the weather is really hot and sunny and you've got a lot of wind, because that wind actually pulls moisture out of the leaves.
Yeah, those little cell pack root, they're so
terrible.
small. Yeah.
Yeah. So with trees, and of course, you're in the landscape, your crews, they plant a lot of trees and shrubs throughout the year. But those are going to have to be watered more frequently. So you've really got to be careful and watch out and make sure that even with your trees and shrubs, with their newly planted, they're going to get enough water to get established and to get good root growth.
Yeah, newly planted trees and shrubs require more than established plantings.
Of course.
Here are some basic watering tips to help you water like a professional. Number 1, check the soil moisture frequently and only water when the soil is dry. Number 2, water the root zone and not the foliage of the plant when possible. Number 3, water slow, deep, and infrequently. These are all things we've discussed. We're kind of doing a little review here. Number 4, water in the morning to allow that wet foliage to dry quickly in the morning sun. Most of your plant fungal diseases are spread by splashing water during rain or irrigation. And so if we can drip irrigation or at least water on the not the foliage itself, but on the ground, you'll keep that foliage dry. This is the best way to get water to the plant, but also not encourage fungal growth. Number 5, thoroughly wet the entire root zone. Apply water until the soil is moist to at least 5 to 6 inches. So how in the heck are we supposed to find out what 5 to 6 inches deep is?
Okay, so for somebody watering a new garden or not experienced in watering a garden, you're probably going to want to water and then just get a hand trowel and go straight down, pull that soil back, and see how far down that water has penetrated the soil. Once you become an established waterer, which sounds so funny, yeah, you're going to know, and it's going to be you're going to get a feel for it.
When you get a feel for your yard, and but different areas in your garden, your yard may drain differently. You may try this a couple times and kind of see. But as you get used to it, now I know I need to water this area for this long to get this to penetrate.
Soil conditions are different in a lot of different locations.
Number 6, use mulch to conserve moisture and reduce frequency of needed watering. Number 7, don't overwater. Check the soil's moisture frequently. Only apply water when the soil is dry to the touch, 1 to 2 inches down. Number 8, set timers to remember to turn off the sprinklers. This can be as simple as your phone. This is what we do. We always set a timer on our iPhone. Sometimes we forget and the sprinkler runs for a lot longer. And then we're like, oh, we got to go run out and turn off the water. But most of the time we just use that. Obviously, if you have a nice a professionally installed irrigation system, comes with an amazing clock that's going to manage it for you. But Amazon's got, and the box stores have got, garden centers got all these great little water timers now that are really easy to use, and they work well. They're reasonable. Number 9, set up drip irrigation or soaker hoses in annual beds, containers, vegetable gardens, and things like that require more frequent watering. Those systems can help save time and provide water directly to the root zone.
And number 10, if you leave town for any period of time, be sure to have a neighbor, a friend, or a family member come and water for you. Newly planted plants and containers cannot go long without water.
Yes. And last thing we didn't talk about was the type of watering tool. I know you and I are big fans of, there used to be the dram, but the water wand with a shower head on it. We've got a couple of trigger ones, but you don't want it. I've seen people water and they shoot straight out of the hose, which if that's all you have, it's all you do. You can use your thumb to diffuse it. But they'll take the jet stream, and shoot the plant with it, and it just blows the plant and the mulch and everything. And it's not a great way of getting the water into that ground. So we like the shower heads that provide more like a rain type situation that mimics that soft way of getting the water to.
Well, anytime you apply a very heavy stream of water, it's just going to run off. It doesn't give that time
to
for
percolate.
The soil. And the soil is kind of like a sponge. As soon as you put a dry sponge in the water, it doesn't absorb that water quickly. So you want to let that water slowly soak into the soil so that the soil can absorb that water. Okay, so this could be the end of a really great episode, but there's one really large area that we haven't touched on.
The lawn.
And that's the lawn. So many people do strive to have that perfect green front lawn. And during the times of drought, that can be really, really challenging.
Yeah, it's not us, but we do. It could be very nice and very effective in a landscape to have a lovely lawn. If you want that to maintain that healthy, dense green, beautiful golf course lawn, then you will want to water during dry periods. And obviously, most people think of a lack of water will damage the lawn. Overwatering can be just as damaging. So it is easy to overwater a turf area, and you see this a lot of times with irrigation systems. So some of these potential consequences of overwatering include increased crabgrass pressure. We see a lot of the nut sedge, increased disease problems, shallow rooting, and waste of valuable resources and just higher water bills.
So when you're watering a lawn, it's best to err on the side of being a little bit more dry than being guilty of that overwatering.
And obviously the frequency of watering will vary from one lawn to another, and it should be determined by the appearance of the turf. There's a cool little test you can do when the first signs of water stress and your turf grass stand is you want to look if you start seeing kind of this bluish green color, and as you walk through it, if there's footprints that remain in the turf after walking across it, then that means that the turf should be ideally watered at this point.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting little tip. Grass can easily withstand water stress without a decline in turf quality, and there's no real benefit to watering your grass before this point. But as the degree of water stress increases, the turf will wilt and it will have kind of a grayish-green color.
So turf that has wilted should be watered as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Wilted turf can recover very quickly following a watering, but severe drought stress can cause turf plants or grass to cease growing, and then the turf is going to turn brown. It's going to go dormant, but it could possibly die.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want to water it at that point to make sure that that plant survives. It's going to take about 2 weeks until the turf's going to produce new leaves and recover completely, but the turf should be watered just not on like that set schedule. You want to make sure that when you start watering your turf, that you're looking at the health and the quality of the turf, not just watering on a set schedule.
Just blindly watering.
Yeah,
like most irrigation systems do.
Exactly. Homeowners that have irrigation, like the automatic systems, they don't want to water it on the same irrigation pattern for that whole summer. And just make sure that you have one of those rain sensors on your
Definitely
system.
get the rain gauge sensor. And
it's worth it.
Yeah, and think about it. It makes sense. I mean, because if you set your irrigation up in the spring, it's our wettest time of year, And those cycles are going to change as you move into the summer and the droughty periods. So it's just a matter of paying attention, just watching things. The automatic irrigation system should be set to start for a single irrigation cycle only and then shut off until the turf requires watering again. Most lawns in Kentucky will need probably 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week, depending on the weather, the soil type, if you have slope, etc. It's best to apply this amount of water in a single thorough soaking or 2 equal applications of water 3 to 4 days apart, rather than this light irrigations every day where people just run the irrigation every day without fail, but it's that light, it creates shallow roots and makes the turf less drought tolerant over the long term. The soil should be wetted to a depth of the deepest root.
Which would probably be what, like 2 inches?
Probably. Hose-in sprinklers usually apply small volumes of water to a turfgrass area, which is not bad, but just know that when you run a sprinkler like an oscillating sprinkler or a rotary sprinkler of some sort, it should be left in one location for at least 2 to 3 hours to really throw that sod or that grass well.
That'll really allow that soil to absorb that water.
In your automatic irrigation systems, like we talked about, with spray heads that distribute water in all directions, they're capable of applying a large volume of water in 10 or 15 minutes. Other automatic irrigation systems with like your rotary sprinkler heads that have one stream of water are capable of applying the necessary water in 30 or 40 minutes. So they may need to be ran a little bit longer.
But here's an interesting point. Most people are going to say, how do I determine how much water is being applied by that sprinkler? So here's a tip for you all. If you want to place a shallow container, like an empty tuna fish can, put that
Make sure
in
it's
the
truly
path.
empty.
Yeah. But put that in the path of your sprinkler. And then you're going to turn that sprinkler on for the amount of time that you think needs to be applied. And then you're going to measure the amount of water that's collected in that tin.
And that's a great way to see if you have an inch or whatever is in there. Yeah.
I mean, you may have 2 inches when you think, you've actually applied 4. So the ideal time to water a lawn, or really anything, flower beds or whatever, would be between 4 and 8 in the morning. Now, that's the time that water pressure is usually the highest because everybody else is asleep. It's only us crazy plant people that are out using water at those hours.
Hopefully with a timer.
Yeah. But also, the neat thing is that that's the time of day when there's least wind. So you don't have the wind blowing the water away from the area that you're trying.
So evaporation's less likely.
Well, and because of the heat of the day,
Mm-hmm.
also, you're not going to have that evaporation from the heat of the day. So it also allows when the water hits the foliage that it will evaporate and you'll get less diseases. So if you don't want to get up between 4 and 8 in the morning, the next best time would be 4 and like noon, because you really want to do that before those really hot afternoon temperatures and when the wind is the strongest.
In extended droughts where the lawn is not watered, the lawn will wilt and the leaves will turn brown, the leaves of the grass blades. But these lawns are not necessarily dead. So everybody say, you always hear people, especially in Kentucky, but we're in a drought. My lawn's completely dead. It's completely dead. It's
like
not.
Right now?
Yeah. It may look awful. Well, of course, now we got some rain, so it's going to green up real quick. But the turf is in a dormant condition. And this dormancy is a natural survival mechanism of the turf plants. The leaves are dead, but the crown, the growing point at the soil and the root system underneath still remain alive. The grass loses water through the leaves, and when the leaves are dead, little water is lost, which conserves water and allows the crown and root systems to remain alive. Turf can actually survive 4 to 6 weeks in a dormant condition without a significant thinning of the lawn upon the return of favorable moisture conditions. After 4 to 6 weeks of dry conditions, the dormant turf should be irrigated with 1 to 1.5 inches of water in one thorough irrigation.
This irrigation will not cause the turf to green up, but it'll provide moisture to help keep those root systems alive and that crown alive. So if that dry weather condition persists, or we're still in that drought, you're going to want to water the dormant turf with about 1 to 1.5 inches every 4 to 6 weeks. So it's not going to green that lawn up, but it'll at least keep those plants alive that, create your lawn. And the turf, once we get consistent rain, it will develop new leaves and start growing again and being active.
And so we're talking about existing lawns, but when you're putting down brand new sod, a lot of times on our landscape jobs, we'll grade a site and put in brand new fresh sod. It looks beautiful. And it's critical to water that sod a lot to keep it healthy. And I always joke and I say you can't overwater the sod, but to my clients, because a lot of times they're not going to listen to me and water that much, but you actually can overwater.
They get a little overzealous.
Yeah. It needs to be watered so that the sod strip itself is completely wet, the entire thickness of that strip. And then the soil underneath that strip is moist to about a depth of about an inch or so. Overwatering sod can be, like I said, it can be a common mistake. It's not the end of the world. I'd almost rather have that than underwater in this situation, because you're trying to keep that sod you spent all this money on alive. But you don't want to saturate so much so that it'll inhibit the roots from like growing into the soil and causing root rot or things like that.
Exactly.
As the sod becomes established, the roots will penetrate and grow into the soil, gradually reduce the frequency of the watering, but wet the soil to a greater depth. So then you're going to start doing less watering, dial back, and a deeper watering like we talked about before. And that allows for that to really ensure that healthy, drought-tolerant lawn. And after the sod has been mowed for, 3 or 4 times, I guess, you would start doing deep and frequent watering again, like we just discussed, more often.
Okay, but so you do a lot of the sod. If you have to reseed a lawn or newly seeded lawns,
we do a lot of seed and straw too. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to want to water that 2 to 4 times a day.
Mm-hmm. Every bit of it.
Yes. So
keep it wet.
The seed bed should stay moist to about 1 to 2 inches, because it's like we talked about earlier. If those, once that seed germinates, if those roots don't have water, they're not going to grow. Okay. But you don't want to water so much that you're actually going to wash your seed away. And that's where there's that balance. So, it's essential to keep those new seedlings moist and not allow them to dry out. So, 2 to 4 times a day if the weather conditions are dry. When the seeds reach, those little seedlings reach about 2 inches in height, you're going to start reducing the frequency of the water, and you're going to water more deeply because those roots are going down deeper. And then again, after your new turf has been mowed, 2 to 3 times, then you're going to switch to that deep, infrequent watering that's best. So that, I think, just about covers everything we can think of about watering.
I'm sure there's still a lot more, but at least we gave it a good try to cover things. And hopefully we didn't overwhelm you with too much information. But it's just, these are good best practices to follow and kind of be cognizant of, but don't get too caught up in it. Like, we're always ones to say life gets in the way, and you want gardening to be fun and real. So don't get too worried about,
Exactly. So we want to thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to the next episode with you.
Thanks so much. Thank you for listening to Gardening with the Gardeners. Please subscribe or follow us to get new episode updates. And please drop a rating or review. If you have a question, either gardening, landscape, or horticulturally related, you can email us at gwtg@boonegardener.com. Thank you for listening to Gardening with the Gardeners.